Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us for a Tuesday night Bible study. So we're going to jump right into the Word. You know, interesting, it's been a very busy time, but you know, when is it not ever a very busy time? It always seems like something's going on, a lot's going on. We just came out of the Passover season and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and I believe, so now we're in the whole counting of the Omer, and I believe today is the 10th day? 10th day of the counting of the Omer? I believe it's the 10th day. I haven't really been paying attention to the numbers part of it. Just know that we've got to do it every day, you know. And actually, and already, what is it, next week, Monday night, I believe, is Rosh Chodesh, Monday and Tuesday for the next new month already. It's like, man, you know, time is going by so fast. But so anyways, so a lot going on. And in the midst of a lot going on, you know, we were talking on Sabbath about resurrection power and how to walk in it and know that that's what we have and stuff. Well, tonight we're going to actually talk about how we have the mind of Yeshua, the mind of the Messiah. You know, you can't, there's things that all intertwine together and connect and stuff, and you know, you got to know who you are and whose you are to be able to operate in resurrection power. Well, having the mind of Yeshua is an important part of that too. You need to know who you are and whose you are. We need to know that, you know, we do have the mind of Yeshua, the mind of the Messiah. And we need to know how to operate out of that mind in these days that we're in. So, we're going to look real quick at 1 Corinthians 2:16, that talks about that. And in the Amplified Classic, it says, "For who has known or understood the mind, the counsels and purposes of the Lord, so as to guide and instruct him and give him knowledge? But we have the mind of the Messiah and do hold the thoughts, feelings, and purposes of his heart." So when thinking about this and stuff and spending time with Holy Spirit, it was like, okay, what direction do you want me to go in with the whole having the mind of Yeshua? And I had something else prepared for tonight, but Holy Spirit was like, we're going to hold off on that one. That will be for another time. And tonight we're going to focus on this. We're going to address this, so to speak. So to fully have 100% the mind of Yeshua, we got to get rid of some of the stuff that may be in the natural mind, that may be affecting us naturally. And so, you know, have you ever found yourself trapped inside your own head, so to speak? Okay. You know, have you ever been in a place where you've overanalyzed something so much that in the natural it just made you tired thinking about it? Okay. So the thing that we're going to address tonight is the dangers of overthinking. When you have the mind of Yeshua, overthinking in the wrong way, in the negative way, shouldn't even be a part of you. Think about it. I'm getting ahead of myself here, I think, but you know, do you think Yeshua overthought things? You know, when him and, you know, with him and his disciples, you think he was like, maybe today we'll go to Capernaum and we'll take the dirt road route A. But yeah, I know, you know what? Maybe the dirt road route B might be better. But no. I know it's route A. We got to go route. Well, you know. What do you think? You know, maybe the temperature. Maybe route A will be way too hot to take that one. Maybe we should stick with route B. I hear it's got more tree shade and stuff. Okay, Yeshua didn't do that, but we have the tendency to do stuff like that. And if you truly know who you are and know that you have the mind of Yeshua, you wouldn't get caught up in stuff like that. Because overthinking, in the reality of it, can be a dangerous place to be. And I'm going to explain more of that, go into that more. But, you know, like I said, overanalyzing something so much, it just made you tired thinking about it. You know, I was thinking about this earlier, and it's like, have you ever thought, I know for me personally, I don't know how other way to explain it, but being guilty of overthinking something sometimes, and thinking about trying to figure something out in my own so much that I actually felt like my brain was hurting. You know, and it's like, it actually feels like your brain's hurting, which is interesting because in reality, your brain can't hurt. Your brain actually doesn't feel pain, okay, which is interesting. Your brain does not feel pain. So it's like, oh, my brain hurts, okay? No, it's actually not your brain that's hurting. it feels like that, but you're overthinking so much about something that you're actually working up all the responses in your body that's causing that to feel that way. So, be overthinking stuff. Have you ever replayed conversations over and over again? Have you ever imagined outcomes? Okay, well, the outcome could be like this, or the outcome's going to be this. Well, you stress about what might happen or what should have happened. Now, that's one of the dangers of overthinking. Overthinking brings stress and unnecessary pressure. So that's overthinking. In the natural, it's exhausting. It can be, so to speak, paralyzing, and I'm going to touch on why I'm saying it that way. But really, it just can be like, it can take your shalom from you if you overthink on something too much. Overthinking is actually mental warfare, if you think about it, because you're battling in your own mind. You're trying to come up with the outcome in your own mind. It steals your shalom. It can steal your sleep. How many of us have, laid in bed in the middle of the night and are just overthinking about something so much that it's stealing our sleep? It can steal your joy, right? If it steals your shalom, it's going to steal your joy. But most importantly, overthinking is dangerous because it steals your focus. It takes you off of what you're truly supposed to be focused on, which is Him and how He's leading and guiding you, or what His Word has said about the situation. It takes your focus off of Him, and it's actually putting your focus on the enemy, because the enemy wants you to overthink. The enemy wants you to get so stuck on something, so stuck on a conversation and constantly replaying it, and your mind is so busy and taking up so much time on that, it's taking away from what you truly should be thinking and meditating on, which is Him and His Word. But as believers, we don't have to be ruled, well, I'll call them as runaway thoughts, okay? Because that's really what they are. They're runaway thoughts. You don't have to be slaves to them. You don't have to be, you ever, see, this is kind of challenges. It's like, I don't know how to put some of it into words, but it's like, you ever felt like you've got, I don't know, kind of like when you fast forward, or you're watching a movie and you put it on fast forward, and you see the, you ever feel like all your thoughts are like that sometimes? They just come racing in one side and through your head and racing out the other one, and right behind it another one. All these thoughts. And that's what the enemy is trying to get you to do. And it's overthinking. But the Bible says, what we just read, we have the mind of Yeshua. And that changes everything. Just like we said on Sabbath, resurrection power can change everything. Knowing that you have the mind of Yeshua and one that can walk in that resurrection power and have that resurrection power operate in and through you changes everything. We can think like Yeshua, which means your thinking is clear, it's purposeful, and it's full of shalom. So interesting in looking at this, I thought, okay, well, let's look, we're talking about overthinking and thoughts and all this stuff. So how do thought processes actually work? Well, our thought processes are the result of an amazingly complex interactions within the brain. So you start with perception. Now we've taught about perception and how you perceive things and stuff. You could perceive something and it actually might not be right the way you see it. Okay, everybody sees things differently. But perception, it all starts with your senses. What you see, what you hear, what you touch, etc. That feeds data into your brain. So there's the beginning of a thought process. So let's take, because we're talking about overthinking, which is actually of the enemy. So you take a thought from the enemy, and it begins with this perception. It begins with feeding data into your brain. Data that's from the enemy. Interpretation is the second one. The brain interprets this input using memory, knowledge, emotions, and context. So think about that. Now, obviously there's a good side to this, okay? I get that. I'm focusing more on the wrong side of it because we're talking about how overthinking can be dangerous. Well, if it interprets using memory, knowledge, emotions, and context, how many times, and we talk about this, how many times do people operate out of emotions? Because of their thinking, because of their wrong thinking. The third one is cognition. This is where active thought happens. Reasoning, problem solving, decision making, planning, daydreaming, all those things meant to be a good thing, a helpful thing. But when we get into overthinking, get into trying to reason too much about something or problem solving too much about something and not getting his input on it, not seeking his answer on it, trying to figure it out on our own when we're supposed to be listening to him because he already has the answer for the situation. Fourth one was neural activity. So we got perception. This is all stuff that's going on in your thoughts, your thought processes, how things work. Neural activity. Thoughts arise from electrochemical activity between neurons. When groups of neurons fire together in patterns, they form the basis of a thought. All right, so that's how thoughts start to come to fruition, so to speak. So then you have automatic versus deliberate thinking. So now you got your thought that's been birthed. Now it's either going to be an automatic or it's going to be deliberate. So fast thinking. Have you ever thought real fast about something? Okay, it's like, whoo, fast. Well, fast thinking is quick, it's automatic, and it's emotional. Okay, so that can be key when you're in a situation where you're finding yourself overthinking too much. It's quick, automatic, and emotional. And a good aspect of it, like instantly recognizing a friend. Okay, so if I'm walking down the street, and not walking down the street, but say I'm walking, in Market Basket, and down the aisle I see somebody I know, a friend or whatever, and I instantly recognize them. Okay, that's a quick, automatic, emotional thought because, oh, it's a friend of mine. I'm happy to see them. You should be happy to see them, okay? But then there's the second one, which is slow thinking. That's slower, more logical, and effortful, like doing a math equation or planning a trip. It takes more thought into doing stuff like that. So your thoughts are also influenced by internal factors like emotions, beliefs, memories, and external factors like your environment and social context. So that's how all that operates in a thought process. So interesting, I just decided to look up. I think one time during a Sabbath sermon we looked up, we said how many words somebody speaks in a day. And I don't recall actually the number right now. I think it was like 16,000 or something like that. But so how many thoughts per day? Now this is key. What does the Bible say? Take thoughts captive, right? And make them obedient to Yeshua. So how many thoughts per day? Well, it's actually it's harder to pinpoint how many thoughts an individual can have in a day. But research from different studies and stuff that has been done, there was a 2020 study done in Queen's University in Canada, which introduced the concept of thought worms. Okay, now that's interesting. Thought worms, patterns in brain activity that indicate a distinct thought. So think about that. You got all these little thought worms going around, okay? Constant moving, all these worms, thoughts going. Using this model, researchers estimated that on average, people have about 6,000 thoughts per day. Now, they actually say now it's more than that, where they have often cited that 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day is what an individual can have. Think about that. That's a crazy number. 12,000 to 60,000. Now, I'd like to say that the 60,000 is probably the overthinker, okay? The person constantly thinking. But think of the seriousness of that. So if you have somebody, let's take the 12,000, because actually this is a little bit of a closer number to words. If you have an individual that's having 12,000 thoughts a day go through their mind, and they speak an average of 12, 14, 16,000 words a day, how many times are they speaking those thoughts out? Putting words to the thoughts. And most oftentimes, that's what people do. They think and speak, whether it's negative or positive, whether it's good or bad. But that's one of the reasons why it's so important when the Bible says take thoughts captive. So, interesting, this was just a kind of a fun fact, but most of our daily thoughts are repetitive. Now, think about it, which is very true. It's like, like what I was just saying earlier, you replay a conversation in your mind. Well, you're replaying that, it's repetitive. You're going over that conversation again and again and again in your mind. And many of this are the same thoughts we had the day before. So not only are they repetitive, they can be many of the same thoughts we had the day before. This has led into different insights about being mindful and the importance of being conscious of what you're thinking about. Don't just let some random thought come racing in out of anywhere, especially from the enemy, and sit there and let it become a worm, okay? Not getting off on this tonight, but this is for another time, and I think I might have it somewhere in here as we go on further. But you're constantly making grooves in your brain, okay? Constantly making grooves, especially children, babies and toddlers and children. That's how they develop and form, with all these grooves by experiences, by words, by thoughts, habits, whatever they're doing, grooves are being made in your brain. So think about that when you're overthinking something. If you're overthinking something, are you now, actually I'm not going to say it as are you now because I actually did read something on this, but when you're overthinking something and you overthink it so much, you're now creating a new groove in your brain, a new section that's saying, overthinker, overthinker, okay, here comes one of those worms racing in, go in the overthinker slot, okay? You actually are starting to form that in your brain, which is another groove, which is another danger of being an overthinker. So that's why we have got to get a hold of that we have the mind of Yeshua. And Yeshua did not overthink stuff. Your thoughts aren't always facts. Okay, now think about it. We have thoughts, 2 + 2 = 4. If I'm thinking, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, that's a fact, okay? But if I'm thinking, 2 + 2 = 8, that's not a fact. Okay, but we can have thoughts that are actually facts, or we can have thoughts, we're daydreaming about something. Well, daydreaming of, sitting on a tropical island down somewhere, sipping on a nice cold iced tea, okay? That's not a fact, okay? It's just a thought that I'm having. But thoughts shape how you feel, act, and even, and I was just saying this, even how your brain wires itself over time. You need to learn to recognize and shift unhelpful thought patterns so that you are able fully to walk out having the mind of Yeshua. Overthinking is an unhealthy thought pattern. I just went over some of it. It can cause you to lose your shalom, cause you to lose sleep. Okay, overthinking, some individuals that have overthought so much about something has actually produced great stress and anxiety within themselves when it's not even meant to be there. And in all situations, and in all reality, most of the stuff that we dwell and overthink about, we're causing the anxiety ourselves. And the truth is, it's not even something that needs to be. Not that we ever need to have anxiety over something, but it's not even something that's like they say, that what you fear the most, you're actually going to draw to yourself. Okay, how the devil makes a mountain over a molehill, okay? That's what overthinking has the tendency to do, and that's why it can be so dangerous. So, overthinking is often rooted in fear, not faith. Overthinking is meant to take you out of a place of faith. So, overthinking is rarely neutral. Okay, if you think about it, it's rarely neutral. Usually an overthinking thought has a side, okay? It's not neutral. It usually comes from fear. And a lot of times when I was reading this thing that they had done research on, like this group of overthinkers, and I was like, I don't know if I would want to be a part of that research study, but, okay, it usually comes from fear, but the fears are, now think about it, okay? Probably most of us, if not all of us, have been there at some point in time. When you're overthinking something, it usually results from the fear of failure, okay? The fear of the future. This was the biggest one. And I thought, oh, yeah. The fear of what people think, what their opinions are of you or what you're doing. Interesting, took this little quiz the other day, and it would tell you whether you're like a perfectionist or people pleaser or different stuff like that. So I took it, and it was only like, 10 questions or something like that. And mine came out perfectionist. And I was like, oh, well, fancy that, okay? I'm not surprised at all, okay? But in the midst of that, part of the perfectionism, from what this quiz was saying, results in how someone's going to see me. So by illustration only, if I'm doing some project that's going to be put out in front of somebody, I'm going to perfect it down to a T, because if there's even a little thing that's off, I don't want, Joe to pick up on it and be like, oh, there was a slight indifference in that, and now that's something that I'd take personally. That would be something like, I guess it could kind of be along the lines of a people pleaser, because it's like, I want to please people to make sure this is 100% right. And if it's not, then I feel like I messed up. I feel like a failure, okay? So, in essence, perfectionism, being a perfectionist, can have the danger of overthinking stuff, okay? There is a danger of overthinking things. Okay, this has to be exactly 2.25 inches. And if it's slight off that line of 2.25, nope, I'm going to spend the 2 hours until I get that on 2.25 inches, okay? That's not healthy. That's actually stealing your shalom. It's putting pressure on you. It's putting stress on you to think you have to perform perfectly, to think you have to perform 100%, to think that people actually only care about us if we perform 100%, to think that people actually only care about us if we do something right or do something for them or whatever. And that's not the truth. But that's what overthinking does. Overthinking clouds your perception and can cause you to think someone thinks a certain way about you and they don't. Okay? So, fear, the biggest one was fear of what people think and what their opinions are. But we know, okay, fear is from the enemy. And when you look at the whole thing we have the mind of the Messiah, in 2 Timothy 1:7, what does it say? Yahweh did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Okay, sound mind. The Amplified says disciplined mind. Okay, self-control. When you have a sound mind, okay, overthinking can't come into play. So a sound mind is a mind that's settled, it's focused, and it's secure. It doesn't spiral in anxiety. Because think about it, a lot of times overthinking causes anxiety, it causes worry, it causes fear. Having a sound mind does not cause you to spiral off somewhere because you've been overthinking of something too much. If you just look at everything with that sound mind, with that mind of Yeshua, then you won't be spiraling off into wherever you spiral off into, okay? But, so why is overthinking harmful? So, overthinking is harmful, one, because it can cause mental exhaustion. Okay, like I said, you feel tired. It feels like your brain hurts, okay? That's just these feelings that you have. But you can mentally make yourself exhausted. Constantly analyzing situations, constantly overthinking, replaying a conversation, replaying what somebody might have said or done, or how you could do this or approach this or whatever. Those types of things, it drains mental energy. And that's what the enemy wants you to do. If he can drain your mental energy, you're not going to be focused. You're not going to have your face set like flint on the word. If he can get you distracted off on that overthinking, it's going to do stuff like that. And actually also, with mental exhaustion in that area, your brain never gets a break. Okay, you're constantly getting all those thought processes going. You're constantly, some have more worms in their brain than others, okay? They have all these thought worms, some have like thousands of thought worms in their brains, and some have a couple hundred. Okay, all because of overthinking. Your brain never gets a break. Now, these are naturally speaking, okay? But you've heard, actually, Dad used to talk about it a lot where, on, was it Mondays, the most amount of pastors would quit being a pastor. Why? Well, because it can lead to burnout. It can lead to fatigue. Overthinking can lead to that burnout, that decision fatigue. But in the natural, have you ever afterwards felt like your body felt tired because you made a decision that you wrestled it with for a while? And it's like, your brain hurting type of thing. That's not how it's supposed to be. And that's why overthinking is dangerous. But it also causes lack of clarity. And that's a big one. Overthinking is harmful because it increases anxiety and stress. Overthinking often revolves around what ifs and worst case scenarios. Okay, well, what if? What if I do it this way instead of that way? Or what if I tweak it this way? And or what if? We don't go with the what ifs, because what ifs can actually even cause you to go towards regrets. Well, if I had just done it that way back then. A lot of times you hear people say, I wish I could go back 10 years. I wish I could go back 20 years and do this differently. Well, you know what? You can't, okay? But the what ifs, what if I had only done this? What if I had only listened? What if I had only listened to Mom? The outcome would have been totally different. So it often revolves around what ifs and worst case scenarios. This triggers the stress response, even if nothing's actually wrong. Okay, a lot of times nothing is even actually wrong. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why overthinking is so dangerous. It's not even, nothing's actually wrong. It's keeping your body in a state of high alert. And in the natural, your body wasn't designed to be in a state of high alert all the time. Third, it's a thing called paralysis by analysis. You get so stuck thinking about options or outcomes that you struggle to take action. Okay? You get so stuck in that you're spending all the time, you're sitting there thinking all the options. And then 2 minutes later, all the options. And then that night, all the options, and you've never done anything about it. It stops you from taking action. This creates a loop of indecision, and I just said this, and regret, which fuels even more overthinking. Do you see how it's just like it's a deadly weapon that the enemy uses. It just keeps, you add fuel to the fire, and eventually that fire is just going to turn into this huge bonfire thing. This was an interesting one. Overthinking is harmful because it lowers self-esteem. Think about it. If you're overthinking so much how to please a person, it's going to, and you're overthinking it in the wrong way, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this, but they're not going to like it anyways. Or what's the point of me even doing this? Because they don't even like me. Most people don't like me. Well, the whole world doesn't like me, okay? And you go off into this, and it starts to affect your self-esteem. Overthinking tends to focus on what you did wrong or could do wrong, even if you didn't. Replaying perceived mistakes can make you question your worth and your abilities. As I was just saying, your worth. Well, everybody hates me anyways. Okay, no, nobody wants me around. I'm a worm in my own brain, okay? That type of thing, right? So the fifth one is rumination. You ever ruminating constantly about something? Okay, that causes you to overthink and focus on a challenge that hasn't even happened. You're basing it off of what could be, okay? Or you're basing it off of maybe one fact that surfaced, or somebody said one word, okay? Remember perception. We all perceive things differently. We all can see things differently. And a lot of times what we think somebody may have said or done, our mind will take that and turn it a different way, and it's not even truth or reality of what they said or done. We may hear a word from somebody, an overthinker could have somebody come up to them and say, I just wanted to let you know that instead of maybe doing it this way, we will do it this way instead. And instantly an overthinker can take that and be like, oh, I did it wrong. They're already telling me I'm about to do it wrong. No, they're saying, no, we're going to do this together. And looking at this, we'll do it this way instead of that way. But the overthinker instantly is like, oh, well, they're already judging me. They're already thinking I'm not going to, that I've already messed up. And that's not what it is at all. It's overthinking. It's ruminating about something over and over and over again. Interesting, a few months back, actually didn't even really know what that word ruminating was. I heard it for the first time and I was like, ask Scott, what is ruminating? And he was the one that told me. I was like, oh, never even heard of it. I guess that's a good thing, I don't know what ruminating is. Or it could not be if I actually do it and don't realize I do it. But it's like, oh, but I heard somebody saying that, they were just ruminating over something over and over and over again. And it's like, no, that you're focusing too much on what's going on and you're not seeking the right way to do it. And that actually can lead into all different things health-wise and stuff like that. But the more you dwell on negative experiences or thoughts, the deeper the emotional spiral. So think about it. Think about, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure maybe all of us in here have experienced this when we were younger. But think about, we all could probably recall a time that somebody said something to us as a child that wasn't approving or, wasn't something that was edifying or built you up or you're a tattletale, okay? That's probably the biggest one. You're a tattletale. You've always been a tattletale. You always go to mom and tattletale about everything. You could be 6 years old and you had a sibling saying, you're a tattletale, you're a tattletale, you're a tattletale. And now you're 60 and you still remember that your sibling when you were 6 were calling you a tattletale, but you overthink it now and all your life it causes you not to do something because you don't want people to think you're a tattletale. So you behave a different way. You've been programmed to think a certain way. You've been programmed to hear that negative word from a sibling, and forgive me, but siblings can be pretty rough at times when you're children. That's why you just got to let it go, all right? But you could have that sibling saying, you're a tattletale, you're a tattletale. And because you played it so much in your mind and began to overthink it, oh, am I a tattletale? Is that true? Is it? Well, I don't know. And it's not. They were just angry at you because one time they caught them doing something and you went and told mom, but now they're going to make you pay because you're a tattletale. But you overthink that so much, and as you get older, you're thinking, well, I used to get called a tattletale when I was 6. You're now programming that into your mind. You've now created a tattletale worm, okay, in your brain, and so it slowly, without you even realizing sometimes, it slowly changes you, and now you think, well, I'm not, I saw my sister do that, but I'm not going to tell mom. Because I'm not going to be accused of being a tattletale. Because it affected you. And that overthinking, that dwelling on what happened in the past, has now caused you to become a different person. And so now you perceive yourself that way, and you think others perceive yourself that way. I use that as an example because my younger sister, when I was younger, tattletaled on me about something, so. But the 6th one is why overthinking is harmful, is, like I was just saying earlier, is having challenges sleeping. If your mind won't shut off, it's hard to fall or stay asleep. Think about that. If you're overthinking, your mind is like saying, hey, I want to go to sleep here, I'm trying to shut off, but you're not allowing me to shut off because you keep overthinking. So what does that do? It now impacts your sleep. I've had many times when I've woken up in the middle of the night and instantly my mind starts going. All the stuff I need to do that day and all this, well, how am I going to do? And it's like, no. 2 o'clock in the morning is not the time to be thinking about that. I'm not going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do anything about it anyways. Okay, so there's no point on wasting brain energy and the little sleep time already to focus on overthinking about something when I've got all day to overthink about it, okay? So it's like, all right, but in all seriousness, it disrupts your sleep. Then what happens? And the natural poor sleep can affect somebody's mood, it can affect decision making, and it affects emotional regulation. Sleep is meant to heal your body. It's meant to rejuvenate your body. It's meant to refresh your body. It's meant to revive your body. But all those things with the mood and the decision making, the emotions, it's just fueling the cycle because we're not stopping overthinking the way that we should be. So, to start to wrap this up. So when your mind starts spinning and starts spiraling in thought, you need to ask yourself, is this coming from fear or if it's coming from faith? Okay, where is this thought coming from? Is it coming from the enemy or is it coming from Yahweh? So in having the mind of Yeshua brings shalom and purpose. Like I said earlier, about Yeshua, he never overthought. He didn't second guess himself. He didn't go up to the lame man on the mat, with intentions of healing him and then thought and said, oh, wait a second, should I really do this today? I don't know, maybe, I'm not quite sure now. I was sure when I was walking down the steps there, but I don't know, should I be healing this guy today? He didn't second guess himself. He wasn't driven by the pressure of the crowds or the opinions of people, okay? Because his mind was fully aligned with Yahweh. Philippians 2:5 says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Yeshua the Messiah. That means we're called to think like Yeshua. That means that we have the mind of Yeshua. And what does that mean? It's peaceful, it's full of shalom, it's not anxious, it's obedient, it's not rebellious, it's eternal minded. That's how we're supposed to be, eternal minded, not distracted by temporary noise. Okay, not distracted by thoughts running in like a freight train constantly. Okay, it's like a cargo train just going through your head, carrying all these thoughts. Okay, that's not how it's supposed to be. The mind of Yeshua trusts Yahweh at all times. It trusts Yahweh's timing. I was having a conversation earlier with somebody about something, and they were saying something about timing. And it's like, yeah, the enemy will use time. He will use time against somebody in an aspect of where it's like okay, why is this taking so long? Why isn't this working? Why has it been a year and it's still not happening? The enemy will use that. And you got to realize, what? Time, you can't allow time to be a factor because he's eternal. All things are eternal. It has nothing to do with time. It has all to do with your faith, but you can't get wrapped up and overthink about time because that's what the enemy will use against you. You need to trust in Yahweh's timing. The mind of Yeshua moves with clarity, does not get caught up in confusion. And this is the same mind that we have, the mind of Yeshua, the Anointed One. So we need to renew our minds daily. Don't just let your thoughts run wild, okay? That's why the Bible says, take thoughts captive. That's why, maybe a couple months ago now, time goes by so fast, but we talked about in Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you were an overthinker, you can renew that. And I don't know, what's the opposite? An underthinker? I don't know if you want to become an underthinker. That might not be good either. So you become the rightful thinker. That's like Yeshua thinking. You don't believe every thought that pops into your head. And we know that, okay? You don't believe every thought that pops in your head. We know that not every thought is from Yahweh. There's many, many thoughts that come from the enemy on a daily basis. Some thoughts are just noise. They're just noise to distract you. They're just noise to keep your mind so occupied on the noise that it's taking you off of Yahweh. It's taking you off of your focus of faith. Some thoughts, like I said, are straight from the enemy. To distract you from what your purpose is, to distract you from what you're believing for, to get you out of faith. Like I said, 2 Corinthians 10:5, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Yeshua. If a thought doesn't align with Yahweh's truth, don't let it run loose in your mind. I've been saying this, we have too many thoughts just run loose in our mind constantly. If it's not from Yeshua, if it's not from Yahweh, it has really no business being in your mind, I guess, because you're just letting your mind run, letting these thoughts run loose in your mind. Lock it up and replace it with the truth of Yahweh's word. Okay, how many times have we heard that? When the enemy comes with a thought of fear, we replace it with the word of faith. When the enemy has a thought, oh, your body's not going to be healed by this, you replace it with the word of healing. You replace the thought with words out of your mouth. We know how to fight thoughts. You can't think a thought away. You've got to speak a thought away. So if you're an overthinker, and all of a sudden, you see that freight train coming down the railroad tracks and it's about to boom right in through your head, speak to it. No, devil, not today. Okay? No, devil, not today. I'm not allowing you in my mind today. I'm not allowing you into my thoughts today. I'm not going to allow you to get me to try to think this about myself, or that this person thinks this about me, or I'm not going to allow you to, overthink on a situation at work so much, or overthink with something with my child, or whatever it is, because that's the enemy's goal, to overthink, throw you out of faith. So as soon as those things happen, we've got to take them captive and replace it with the word. We got to get in the word. We got to get decreeing towards them. And we need to surround ourselves with voices that speak life and not confusion. It's all about life, not confusion. So think about this. When Yeshua faced a storm, he didn't overthink about it. Okay? He didn't instantly panic. He didn't do any of that stuff. He saw the storm coming, and it's there, and he didn't instantly get into fear or instantly think, how am I going to get out of this storm? Or batten down the hatches. How many pieces of plywood do we need to throw up over the windows? Or blah, blah. This is this overthinking process. He didn't do that. So when the storm comes in your mind, you need to speak to it like he spoke to the storm. And he said, Shalom, be still. Sometimes you just got to speak to your mind, Shalom, be still. What does the word say in Psalm 46:10? Be still and know that I am God. Okay? Mind, Shalom, be still. That's what we got to start saying. When we feel that the enemy is coming with this barrage of worms, okay, these thoughts, peace, be still. Mind, Shalom, be still. Because if you've got the mind of Yeshua, and we all do, okay, if you're a believer, you have the mind of the Messiah, the Anointed One, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, we've got 100% total 24/7 access to Shalom. So we speak to our minds, Shalom, be still. We have that Shalom to get clarity, to get divine perspective. It's like I said, the next time your thoughts start running wild, don't just sit there and go with them. Really, if you think about it, just don't sit there and suffer with them. Because that's really what is happening, because they get you so upset sometimes and out of sorts and things. Don't sit there and take it. We've talked about that before. Don't take things from the enemy. Fight back. Stand in your authority and say, I have the mind of Yeshua. My thoughts are not random. They are redeemed. I have the mind of Yeshua, and I speak peace, be still to this mind. And I have the word of Yahweh, and he always leads me in the right direction. That's having the mind of Yeshua. And so, that's the dangers of overthinking. And in all reality, we really need to get past that, because we don't realize what the enemy is allowing to happen, what we're allowing the enemy to do in our lives. It's taking us out of faith. It's causing blessings to be blocked. It's causing things that we've been believing for to be delayed. It's causing us to look as not a big a threat to the enemy, because all he has to do is be like, okay, give her this thought, poof, she's going to overthink it, and I just took her out of position for a while because she's so busy overthinking something, she's not seeing the real thing that could be happening over here, and she's out of position. And so she's not going to stand and act in who she is and whose she is, with resurrection power and power in her words and all power and authority given to her, because I've got her overthinking about something. So interesting. I came across this story, and I thought, oh, I came across two, and it was like this little one, it was kind of interesting, but then it was like, oh, I saw the second one. I was like, I'm going to read this. And for some of us, actually it will witness for most of us, because most of us in here amusement park people, okay? And I just thought it was interesting that the ride that they used for this story, but the title of the story, think about it, is called Loop-de-Loop Logic, okay? Loop-de-loop, okay, you know, you've ever had times when your thoughts have made you feel a little loopy, okay? It's like, okay, I'm done with this, okay? So this was the story, and it's just kind of funny, but in all reality, it's real, because this is what this person was experiencing, okay? And probably many of us have been in a similar situation. So Jamie stood at the base of the towering roller coaster, neck craned back like a sunflower trying to understand the sun. The coaster roared above, its steel skeleton rattling with the cries of thrill seekers, screams of joy, or possibly terror. Probably more possibly terror, okay? Hard to tell. Jamie took a step back. Come on, yelled Riley, halfway through the turnstile already. You're gonna love it. Yeah, right, how many times have we heard that, right? Jamie smiled weakly and followed, each step up the ramp triggering a new, increasingly irrational scenario in her brain. I was laughing when I was reading this because I'm thinking, I've been there, done that when some of these waiting for a ride. And you know, the longer you wait for the ride, the worse it gets, okay? So it's like, so here we are. So here comes the running wild thoughts waiting for this roller coaster. What if this is the one ride in history where both the main cable and the backup fail at the exact same time? What if a bird flies into the wheel assembly and we plummet? Is that a thing? Birds happen, right? Do I trust this harness? The teen who buckled it was chewing gum and humming some country song, okay? What if I drop my phone and it hits someone at terminal velocity? I lost it on that one. I thought that was so funny. It's like, oh gosh. That kid just licked the railing. Should I tell someone? Should I disinfect the universe? Okay? These are all thoughts that, seriously, people run through their head. By the time they reached the boarding platform, Jamie had calculated a 0.0024% chance of catastrophic failure and a 67% chance of passing out mid-ride. Okay? The coaster screamed into the station. People stumbled out laughing, hair wild, phones somehow intact. No one was dead, not even close, okay? Jamie stepped into the car, heart doing its best impression of a drumline on espresso. The lap bar clicked down. You good, Riley asked, eyes gleaming. Are you good? It's all's well, right? Totally, Jamie said, sweat already pooling like they were in a sauna. The ride began its slow climb. Click. You know, just reading it starts some adrenaline. It's like, oh man. Click. What if this is the moment a mechanical flaw from 2007 finally decides it's had enough? Click. What if I make an involuntary noise so weird it ends up going viral with 2 million views and the caption, when anxiety meets G-force? Click. Did I lock the car? Oh gosh, did I lock the car? Oh no, what if it's being towed right now? Oh gosh. They reached the top. And for a moment, now interesting, I want to expect the outcome, okay? Now, the dangers of overthinking could get you to think it's going in one direction. They reached the top, and for a moment, just a breath, the world stilled. Think about that. Now, I'm not a roller coaster person, but, you know, Jordan, I could sure can say when he got to the top of the hill, and there's that brief second where it's like, ooh, and then all of a sudden, that ooh turns into ah, okay? The world stilled. The park spread out like a toy model. The wind kissed Jamie's face, and every ridiculous thought melted into silence. Then came the drop. Jamie screamed. Not a dignified scream, not even a cute one. It was pure chaos. Part kazoo, part existential crisis, part relief, and it was glorious. By the time they coasted back into the station, Jamie was laughing uncontrollably, hair a disaster, brain quiet for the first time all day. That was awesome, Jamie gasped, climbing out. Told you, Riley said, already pointing toward the next trap in the distance. Ferris wheel? I was like, oh gosh. Jamie paused. Ferris wheel, open air, so many what ifs. Let's do it, Jamie grinned. I'll just overthink it in rotation. Right? I read that and I was like, oh gosh, this is like actually will fit just right in for some of us at amusement parks, okay? And I have to say from personal experience, the first time, not being a roller coaster person at all, okay, the first time going to Six Flags and deciding to go on the Gauntlet, which was the worst thing to decide as your first roller coaster to go on, okay? And it was like, and waiting in that line and looking at it, and it's like, oh, well, this can't be too bad, right? You know, and it's all those feelings and stuff, and I mean, literally the adrenaline's going, and you're shaking, and you're watching. The worst thing to do is watch and to listen. Because when I was reading that, it's like you hear the thing going up the hill, the click, 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 and you're thinking, ooh, if one of those clicks unclick and that thing goes shoot right back down the hill, you know, your mind is doing all these things and watching, and then you hear the screams and stuff. And so for me, it was like, oh, okay, you know, I'm normally not a roller coaster person at all. Was on a roller coaster once in my entire life. It was an awful experience, and it was like, I'm not ever doing this again. But then I decided, no, let's give this a try again. And having those feelings, those thoughts, waiting, and then getting on it, and then being halfway up the hill and thinking, why did I do this? Why am I doing this? I should not have even done this. I thought many times backing out while I was standing in line, but it's like, nope, can't turn back now. And going through that gauntlet, you know, different experience for different people. It could have even been, it was either a glorious one or it was like never again. It was the worst thing that ever happened in their life, okay? But for me, thinking that would have been the worst experience I've ever had happen, you know, I was laughing so hard. And I think it helped because I wasn't by myself on the car, and so there was more to kind of like laugh at, okay? But it was like, when I got off that thing, it was like, I like that. That was like this Jamie. That was awesome, okay? And I've gone on it a few more times after that. But it's just like, but that just kind of puts a little bit of a funny twist on what overthinking does. But when I was reading that, I was like, oh gosh. I was like, yeah, you actually have those thoughts, okay? Some of those thoughts are like, it's like, oh, wait a minute, did I lock the car? Oh, I don't recall if I locked the car. You know, totally irrational thoughts, okay? Or it's like, oh, wait a minute, was my phone secure enough? What if my phone does drop off and boink the person below me on the head, okay? Or even the one about, you know, you let out this weird noise, you know, because you screamed so differently that now it's gone viral. There you are screaming on this, you know. But that's all what overthinking does. And overthinking can either lead to, and most of the time leads to, stealing your shalom, stealing your joy. But in this case, the overthinking proved wrong. All those thoughts that she was thinking as she's going up that roller coaster hill, not one of them took place. Not one of them took place. They were all irrational thoughts. They were all thoughts that, you know, come on, really? You know, the mechanical failure from a part from 2007 is going to take place right at that moment when you're on the roller coaster. Okay, no. These are all thoughts from the enemy. So that's why overthinking can be so dangerous. And that's why we've got to realize, well, wait a minute, that's not who we are. That's not in us. You know, that's not in our DNA, like we were talking about on Sabbath. Resurrection power is what is in our DNA. You know, our DNA, our body makeup, you know, is his brain is my brain. His mind is my mind. His eyes are my eyes. All that type of stuff. And we have the mind of Yeshua, the Anointed One. And anything the enemy tries to throw our way, any thoughts that he tries to get to come in that are of him, we just say, peace, be still. Shalom, be still. And all will be well. Amen. Well, thank you for those of us joining us on Facebook tonight. I hope you got something out of this, and we will see you on Saturday at 11.